The sort of seed and sort of other stuff as well. Just general things that I've noticed in indigenous nurseries generally. And one of them, which I think almost all of you will face, is the problem with irrigation. Automatic watering is wonderful because it means you don't have to do it, but I'd say almost every indigenous nursery is guilty of overwatering, and it's a problem because it promotes liverworts and algae and fungus gnats and just about all the problems that you have. A lot of them could be reduced by judicious watering. Where possible, it's hard, but where possible, hand watering is the gold standard. You avoid wetting flowers, so you water sort of directly into the pot, and you get it to the point where it's saturated. You let it drain, and that's that. If you can do it, that's what we should be aiming for. Because one of the reasons, particularly if you've got stock plants, a lot of species of pollen is actually destroyed by watering. So overhead watering, particularly of stock plants, gets into the flowers, destroys the pollen, reduces the amount of seed set you're going to get. So instead of getting nice seed like you've got here, you get nothing like you've got there. So Propagation is one species that certainly won't seed properly if you overhead water. So we get around that by not overhead watering, but yeah, also keeping the leaves of plants wet. They don't like it. So we did very badly with species like Hecalia, which used to be sign of blossom, like the sweet hound tongue, doesn't like having wet leaves. Ranunculus, Acacius doesn't like having wet leaves. A lot of other species are the same. Long-term storage of seed, there's no point having seed just sitting in your storage. Use it if you're gonna collect it, but for long-term storage, you really need to be putting some time into preparing the seed first. So, especially for things like Dianellas and whatnot, if you put them away even a little bit wet, they'll go manky over time and they'll lose viability quite quickly. So, ideally, you want to really dry everything before long-term storage. So, put them outside on a really sunny, hot day in summer and let them really get dry, or use a dehydrator and just really dry them off. You'll be preventing mould and all sorts of nasties. Use silica gel if you can. They're often in medication or packets of nori seaweed for your rolls, California rolls. That can be reused, any of that stuff. So you just dry it out in an oven on like 100 degrees for a couple of hours, or 70 degrees for a couple of hours. Stick that in with your lamandra seed, and that'll keep really nicely in an airtight container for years. Seed baking. This is a technique that has been really revolutionary for our nursery. If you think about what happens with seeds usually in the bush, so seed usually forms late spring, early summer, drops, and is exposed to the summer conditions for, like as hot as it can get, as dry, and then it'll germinate in sort of autumn with the cooling rains. So that's very different from if you collect it during summer and you put it into your seed storage system, because the top layer of soil, we did an experiment a couple of years ago with a guy from La Trobe Uni, can get up to 65 degrees in the top layer of soil, and it can probably get hotter than that, because that was a buried bit of seed. So 65 degrees is quite hot. It's a quite significant sort of temperature biologically, and it's been shown that different sorts of proteins and things are created when you hit those temperatures. They're called heat shock proteins, and there's other sort of things called to do with drying, something about desiccation. But these things are involved in germination and stuff. So What was found was that putting our seed out, so we'd sow seed like Dianellas, Lepidospermas, Uroromertus, which used to be Bayechia ramosissima, Comosperma erichinum, Herbaceous will germinate very well after being, you sow them very early summer, you leave them out like this in the hottest, driest, crappiest spot you can find, give them protection against birds and rats because otherwise you can lose the whole lot, and then reintroduce them into your production system once the temperatures start coming down, and you will find that you get germination of them.
So how do you do that from there, Daniel? Are you sieving them back out of what you...
No, we just
Is that
add
already
water.
the soil, is it?
Yeah, that's not my...
No, that's
That's not my work. That's one of my...
If that was yours...
Yeah, no, that is ours, but that wasn't me doing it. I wouldn't cover them in sand like that.
Okay.
Usually just had an enthusiastic helper.
Yeah.
Worked fine.
Yeah.
But just you sow them as you would normally sow. Like, as you would, I would cover anything that's a decent sized seed. You don't have them too deep because they won't get baked, but fairly close to the surface, not exposed to the sun. Didn't seem to make any difference when we did that.
Sorry, you've got to go on and say what species that's best for?
Yeah, well, the species that it's worked for. So it can do things just like promoting germination as well. Like, so Dianella long that's been baked versus that hasn't been baked. And Dianella long comes up pretty well, but it came up like an absolute mad thing with the baking. Lamandra multiflora did well versus did nothing. And we get the same with Dianella revoluta. Some species don't respond over enthusiastically, like revoluta. You don't get an absolute 1,000 of them coming up, but you probably get 300 or 400% more than you would on a normal trade. Trichorini, Lepidosperma laterale, Thelionyma don't come up 100%, but they do come up more than other techniques.
Do you have problems like if you let them dry out like that with like water dependency when you do go back to rehydration?
Oh, maybe, but you just do a little bit of water, let it sit, and then come back 15 minutes later, put a bit more water. Eventually you'll get it back and it's fine.
You look at Lepidospermas, are you pro-treating those before you bake them?
No, not in this lot. We've done a bit of hot water scarification, and I don't think that made any difference. So we hot water scarified, then baked. No major difference.
Not smoky water or any mention?
We've added smoke water to several of them, but hasn't made any significant change. We're trying this year, which is using a dehydrator at about 65, 60 degrees. So we've got a range of species there, but we're doing some grasses and stuff as well. So this will be good because you can, for direct seeding, so you could, with your stipers, instead of having to leave them out for 3 months and have them exposed to being eaten by ants or whatever, if you can treat them like that and then just throw them out after the autumn rains and get a good germination result, that's ideal. So you're avoiding the potential herbivory of your seeds. Plus, if you could just treat them in a desiccator, that's so much more handy than having stuff lying around in the nursery for months on end. So trying to figure out here what the mechanism of baking is, so that we can do it quicker and more efficiently. Another problem that people will run into with seed production is using crappy seed. If you get rain during the flowering period of a lot of these things, or there are various reasons why you might get a poor seed lot. This is decent Coronidium. All of those little red circles are good seed, versus this is collected. Something went wrong here. There's only like 3 or 4 seeds that are viable in this photo. So, yeah, the quality of your seed is a very important factor about why you might be getting failures, and it's worth, if you can, just every now and again sticking them under a microscope or something similar, so you can say, oh well, this has got no plump seed in it, so we shouldn't be expecting much to come of it. Collecting before stuff's ripe. So we've done this, very guilty of doing this at Maroondah. Ostrastipe rudis just sort of sits on the plant for months, and it looks like it's ready in December, but these are December collections, and all of these kind of thin things here are just duds, whereas all of this stuff over here is big and plump, and this was collected in mid-Jan, the other one was mid-December, and that explains a lot of why that other lot, that first lot, is going to be no good. Same for lepidospermas. I've had lepidosperma seed given to me that was just completely just all duds. So the duds look a bit like that. The good ones are all nice and plump and shiny. That's never going to do anything, and you often, I've been given that several times. Not even Jesus could produce.
How many years can you keep that seed before you sell it? Yeah, do it fresh or?
We generally have been doing it fresh, but we're trying some dry. Don't know. But I think being such a big seed, it's happy to sit in the soil until fire or whatever. It'll last for a fair while. After ripening is a problem that, just to complicate matters, some species like to sit and be collected and just sit in a jar for a year. I don't know why, they just do. After ripening is a kind of process where the embryo and the seed changes with storage and becomes better able to germinate for some reason. So fresh Thermida collected the same year, the year before Thermida. Red anther wallaby grass, a year old, fresh. I didn't know that until this year. So some of the species will benefit from just sitting there, and working out which those are is going to be something that's good to be sharing amongst ourselves.
We've always kept Thermida until the following November.
Yeah, good idea. Another area that needs a lot of work is where we've got species that really like some sort of symbiotic partner for the germination. Epacris is one that I've done with a symbiotic sort of setup. So you sow or you add oat bran to the mix and a bit of treacle to provide sugar for the fungi, which are symbiotic with the Epacris, and you add some soil sort of extract from a natural area, and that seemed to promote the germination of Epacris. I had germination of Comosperma erichinum, which I thought was terrific, but then the plants just sit there. They're tiny little plants and they do nothing. And I tried adding some symbiotic stuff, but nothing came of it. So that's another one. It's a species, you can get it to germinate. It wouldn't bother forming seeds if it couldn't produce little plants. So it's one that we should collaborate on to see if we can improve.
So can I just add, we've done cuttings that did really good and gave roots of the Comosperma erichinum, and then they died, and apparently then we'll put that with cuttings too.
It may be that they just need this symbiotic thing, but because they're a heath species, they grow in some miserable soils. It wouldn't be the least bit surprising if they were strongly dependent on something. It could be even a combination of something.
Can I also just ask, I don't know, it may not be the same grouping, but the Lobelia tubosa, have you had, does that fall into any of these?
That's one that responds to fire. I don't know if it's a symbiotic thing. We had it come up after our brush cut and rake treatment, which we thought was pretty cool. So it's not fire per se. It's this
Terrifying.
something else. Yeah, it could be heat to the soil. Could be less competition. Sometimes when you kill off other things, they give off ethylene, which is another plant hormone, so who knows. But yeah, that'd be a nice one to know about. So what next for sort of seed growing? I'm really keen on further investigating the symbiotic stuff. Weird species we've talked about a bit earlier, that some seasons they come up really well and then the next season they do nothing. So Pattersonias we get that with Garnia Cipriana. Sometimes it goes bananas and then sometimes it does nothing. What's that about? And ferns by spore. Like, I don't think any of us, you guys grow ferns, but from spore is the sort of gold standard, and so that's something that we're keen to look at next. So I think that's pretty much. Oh yeah, timing of sowing also critical. Some species like your lilies and daisies and things like that like to germinate in the cool weather, like now. Other stuff like your thermidors and your peas and acacias will happily germinate during the hot weather. But some might do better if we grew them in spring, like so Epacris, if you germinate that in spring, then it needs that kind of good summer growing season to really push on, and I think the peas are sort of similar. If you germinate peas now, they're sitting there during winter and they're kind of miserable, and then during spring they go, hey. So maybe it's a matter of we should be growing them during spring rather than and then selling them or planting them in the next season.